Okay, hello, my name is Hannah Glazer, and this is the video audio visual recording of my sort of thoughts on this week's sort of subject of personal versus public and interpretation through work. I chose two artists, one who is featured in this week's list of artists for class, and my personal one who came to my mind when thinking of someone who uses their own art language to define issues, that being Emil Ferris, who did this book, My Favorite Thing is Monsters, which has had a large impact on the content of my work and is actually, I would say, uh, the cause of my personal focus on like horror as a genre to deal with like sexuality and gender. So here's an image from the book itself, like one of the very detailed line works, which she did all in pens in a notebook as she was relearning how to sort of draw and write after an accident. And here is the book cover, also done in this hatching style she does throughout the story. So here is, within the story, it follows the life of a girl named Karen, who is this character right here, as she deals with issues involving death that has happened near her home. She is also dealing with like concerns and sort she's coming to terms with her gender and sexuality because Karen does not feel like a girl, she feels like a werewolf. She deals with a lot of the issues in her life by conflating them with like monsters and monster genres, which she has become like aware of like through the Pulp Fiction and like creature feature movies that her older brother Dees shares with her. And she is dealing with, on one level of the story, the homophobia that comes from having a crush on her friend here, who's named Missy, and like Missy has been pulled away from her because of her mom's racism, classism, and homophobia, because Karen is Hispanic and also comes from like a poorer family. And anyways, so Ferris deals with these issues by personifying them as different creatures. Like Karen wants to be a werewolf, where it is like considered a more masculine creature, as well as like constantly having it be explicitly obvious this is who she is, whereas Missy is a vampire, or which is considered a seductress and beautiful, and it makes sense that this is how Karen personifies her, since Karen has like this deep attraction to her and deep misses her friend, who has now been transformed into her human form in order to hide amongst the pink mob, as you can see being referred to here. Other characters who have these monstrous forms that also deal with the issues of their like of their situations is Sandy, who is a sort of poltergeist. She is constantly has like this almost invisible ghostly stance amongst everyone at all times throughout the story, and it is in some moments implied that she might not even be real. Like, we as an audience aren't certain if she is someone Karen has made up to befriend her, or if Sandy is simply shy and hiding away to keep herself safe, because Sandy is incredibly poor, and it's implied her family probably does not own the home that she's staying in, or whether or not she even has family there, if she's simply pretending to do so to not be taken away. And then over here is Karen's other friend, and who is a black boy who has the scar similar to that of Frankenstein, because he was beat by locals in his neighborhood for being black and being gay. And so a lot of the narrative in this story focuses on using like the language of monster iconography and the discrimination against them to deal with the discriminatory practices in like against like minority groups of like all varieties. Uh, he, here you can see she also uses a great deal of like art reference to classical works, and well, not necessarily classical, but like because there's like a variety of art, but she uses a lot of monstrous imagery that is in like the history of art, because that is something Karen and her older brother Dee's bond over in the story, and Karen uses it as metaphors in the story to deal with characters who are doing things she cannot quite understand or handle, and alterations are made to these art pieces to better express the points. Like here you can see the face of the horse. In real life, the horse is much more subtly shaded into the background. There is a great deal of shadowing going on, but here it's made more pronounced because she references it in the piece. And so here is the other story that like deals with gender and sexuality, which is Fun Home by Alison Bechdel, who we did bring up in class. Alison Bechdel, I have been studying both of these authors like since freshman year of college. Funnily enough, I read them both in the same class for the first time, and I very much enjoyed like both of their takes on how like their experiences with lesbianism and dealing with gender, as Emile Ferris has stated that she had rather been a monster as a child than a girl, and like Alison Bechdel like fought against these gender roles that were placed upon her, ironically, by her also gay father, who was trying to live through his desire for gender expression as she tried to fight against it for her own identity. This can be seen in this car conversation they had. I believe this is the scene that is them driving to the gay bar, which they will fail to get into because he is left unaware that the age of drinking has been raised and that she cannot go to it. But it is seen throughout the story, like once it has been revealed that both of them are in fact a lesbian and a gay man, that she is trying to connect with him after having hoped that revealing her lesbianism would in fact break her away from her family, but has instead resulted in tying her back, which has a similar sort of ideal as a lot of queer youth like coming out in hopes of breaking away from traditionalism. But it is important to acknowledge the history of queer people, as these are the people who paved the way for us to be safe to do what we are now doing today. And like here Allison tries to connect with her father over like discussing issues that like the modern group has now come to like dislike, but he does not see it as being overly negative, as a man who has been closeted in a homophobic sort of conservative town for years. But like she's been trying to deal with figuring out gender identity and sexuality, so she goes with it. Here is something interesting that she does in her story. It doesn't necessarily have to do with her sexuality or gender, but has to do with how Bechdel presents thought, how she presents information, and sort of brings into question her display as a trustworthy narrator. She intentionally changes an aspect of the visual in order to conflate better with her own personal memory or visualization of a scene that was described to her, but it is acknowledged through her writing that she knows that this is the incorrect visual, but it is how she herself views it and felt it was important to include so. And I've always been interested in this scene and how there's this implication of like what is the truest recollection of this scenario. Is it that acknowledgement of it being truly a mailman, or is it the milkman she draws, because that is how she, as the author and as this is autobiographical, draws it? Is it more honest to the drawing or the clarification? I wanted to continue on into the whole discussion on like sort of gender identity and her fighting against it, and how this like focus from her father on like her femininity like resulted from his own like internalization of the homophobic society he was put into, and wanting to sort of express his own sexuality through his daughter, and like this perceived image of the family, to the point like where he had an overly perfected ideal of the house and the children and the dressing and his wife, and the lack of affection show despite the perfect imagery, and how that relates to how like the hidden, like the closeted existence, like having to have this like perfected visual like expressed. uh and here I just wanted to quickly touch on, like, similar to how Ferris used the classical art, like Bechtel uses quite a bit of like classics in literature, or in moments especially like connected to sexuality and sex itself, like in the moments she's having like sexual pleasure for herself or with her girlfriend Joan, when she is frequently quoting literature such as the Odyssey, or like Gertie McDowell, who like to deal with sort of the expansive nature of sexuality, while like tying back into her own identity and breaking away from her father, who she considered to be a false academic who did it for show. She can tie it into her life in a rather nuanced and I would say humorous display. Anyways, thank you.